Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into something really interesting, a financial force that shapes, well, pretty much every decision you make. And often, you don't even realize it's happening. Imagine like a silent, almost invisible string pulling at your financial choices, guiding them in ways you didn't consciously intend. This isn't just some, quirky psychological thing. It's fundamental to how our brains work, and it's secretly, subtly influencing everything. From your daily coffee purchase to big investment moves, we're talking about the anchoring effect. It's a powerful cognitive bias, and it can make one seemingly innocent number completely hijack your rational decision-making. It's like a hidden current, in the ocean of your finances, constantly tugging you towards a destination you didn't pick. So our mission in this deep dive is pretty clear. We're going to expose this unseen influence. We'll try to understand just how far it reaches into your financial world. And most importantly, we want to equip you with strategies to break free, to sort of reclaim control over your money. By the end of our chat, you'll hopefully have a whole new lens to view, well, every price tag, every salary offer, every investment opportunity. Okay, so let's unpack this anchoring effect. What exactly is it?
Right. So at its core, anchoring bias is basically our human tendency to rely too heavily on the very first piece of information we get, that first piece of info. That's our anchor.
Okay, the anchor.
And when we make later decisions or judgments, we tend to stick too close to that initial anchor. And here's the crucial part. Once that anchor is set, our minds adjust around it, but, and this is key, we often adjust insufficiently.
Insufficiently. So we don't move far enough away from that starting number.
Exactly. Think of dropping a real anchor from a boat. Even if the current changes, the boat stays pretty close to where that anchor first landed, right? Even if that spot isn't actually the best place to be. It's kind of the same idea.
Okay. But how heavy is too heavy? I mean, does that first number always have to be relevant? Or could it be something completely random that still anchors us?
That's a fantastic question, because what's truly fascinating here is precisely how our brains latch on to that initial data point. It doesn't really matter if it's truly connected to the decision we're making.
Really? Even if it makes no sense?
Yeah. It highlights something fundamental about how we think. We look for reference points, even arbitrary ones.
Yeah.
It helps us simplify complex judgments. We just sort of crave a starting point. And the power of that irrelevance, that's what makes anchoring so sneaky. So insidious.
Wow.
And this isn't just theory. It's been shown again and again in experiments. One of the most famous examples comes from a classic 1974 study. It was by two giants of behavioral science, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, right. Tversky and Kahneman, their work is legendary. So tell us about that experiment.
Well, they gathered some participants and had them spin a rigged roulette wheel.
Rigged? How so?
It was set up so it would only land on one of two numbers. Either 10 or 65.
10 or 65, got it.
Then, right after seeing this totally random number from the wheel, they asked the participants a question. A seemingly unrelated question. What percentage of countries in Africa are part of the United Nations?
Hold on. A roulette wheel number. And the percentage of African nations in the UN. What on earth does one have to do with the other?
Absolutely nothing.
Right.
And the participants knew the number was random. They knew it was meaningless for the question.
I sense a but coming.
But here's the kicker. Despite knowing it was random, the number they'd just seen significantly swayed their estimates.
No way. Seriously?
Seriously. On average, the people who saw the number 10 on the wheel, they estimated that about 25% of African countries were in the UN.
Okay, 25%.
But the group who saw the number 65, their average estimate jumped way up to 45%.
45%, just based on seeing a higher random number beforehand?
Yeah.
That's astonishing.
It really is. It perfectly illustrates how an anchor, even one that's completely irrelevant, holds this surprising power over our judgment.
And our brains are just desperately grabbing for any starting point, aren't they? Even a meaningless one.
Precisely. That experiment just perfectly underscores that the anchor doesn't need any logical connection to the decision. Our minds, they're trying to simplify a complex task, like estimating something as tricky as the percentage of African nations in the UN. So they just grasp onto the most readily available number and then adjust from there.
But they adjust insufficiently. That's the key part you mentioned.
That's the key part. It's an automatic, almost unconscious process, which is why it's so powerful and, well, everywhere. Once that arbitrary number pops into our head, it creates a mental benchmark. It shapes our perception of what a reasonable answer might be, even for something totally different.
Wow.
And this core mechanism, this unconscious grab for a reference point, It's not just in labs, it's operating all around us in countless everyday situations,
That's right.
especially when it comes to our money.
Okay, I'm starting to see it now. And once you start looking,
Yeah.
yeah, you probably see anchors everywhere,
Yeah.
especially when companies are trying to get us to, spend our cash.
Yeah.
Let's talk about manipulating price perception. That seems like a big one.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, have you ever seen a menu with one item that's just ridiculously expensive, so much that you almost laugh?
Uh-huh. The outlier.
Exactly. There's this place in New York, Serendipity 3. They have a cheeseburger, maybe 17.95 cents. Feels a bit pricey already, right?
Yeah, for a burger.
But then right next to it, they list a $69 hot dog. $69 for a hot dog.
Slight chuckle. Okay, that's definitely an anchor.
Right. Suddenly that $17.95 cheeseburger doesn't look so bad. It looks, well, reasonable. Almost frugal even. And the thing is, they probably don't expect to sell many of those $69 hot dogs.
Not at all. It's a decoy.
Exactly. It's a decoy anchor. By setting that ridiculously high price point, it makes everything else on the menu seem cheap in comparison. And guess what? Sales of the other items, like the burger, probably shoot up.
It's a classic psychological pricing trick.
It really is.
Oh,
So next time you're looking at a menu and see that one outrageous item, just remember its job. It's the silent hero making your other choices feel like a steal,
Yeah.
even if you're still paying maybe more than you planned.
And Nespresso pulled off something equally brilliant. They didn't just change a price, they changed the entire context, the whole frame of reference for coffee prices.
Nespresso, how so?
Well, think about it. What's the most you'd pay for, say, a pound? Or let's use grams, like in the example. A 474-gram bag of coffee.
Maybe 15, 20 euros, if it's really good stuff.
Right. Now, imagine someone tried to sell you that same bag for 45 euros.
45 euros for a bag of coffee? No way, that sounds crazy expensive.
Exactly, because most of us are anchored to the price per bag. That's how we usually buy coffee. And 45 euro just feels way off compared to that anchor. So what did Nespresso do? They started selling coffee in tiny single-serve pods.
Oh, the pod.
Each pod makes one cup. And that fundamentally shifted the anchor. Instead of comparing the cost to a bag of coffee, people subconsciously started comparing the, say, 50 cents for an espresso pod to the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks or Costa.
Yeah.
When Americano might cost you, what, 3.50 points?
Okay, I see it now.
Suddenly, 50 cents for a premium-ish cup at home seems like an incredible bargain.
Wow. They completely reframe the value proposition just by changing the unit of comparison. Genius.
They masterfully used a more favorable anchor, the price per cup, to make their products seem way more appealing.
That is genius.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder, though, are there times when this kind of reframing feels a bit manipulative, like companies are being too clever?
That's a valid question. There's definitely a fine line between clever marketing and potentially misleading consumers.
And speaking of clever tricks, you know the whole .99 price thing, does that still actually work? It feels so old school.
You'd be surprised. It absolutely still works. Studies consistently show that the first digit of a price acts as a really powerful anchor.
The first digit.
Yes, we're much more likely to buy something priced at, say, 39.99 than the exact same item priced at 40 euro.
Just because of the 3 night instead of the 4 at the start?
Exactly. That initial digit makes it feel like it's in a lower price category, even though the difference is tiny. Our brain just registers the 30-something more strongly than the 40. There was a great study on this from Ohio State University back in 2021. They looked at coffee sales.
Coffee again.
So, scenario 1. A small coffee was 95 cents, and a large was $1.20. In that case, only about 29% of people chose the larger, more expensive one.
Okay, most went for the small.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But then they just increased both prices by 5 cents. Small coffee became $1, large became $1.25.
Still only a 25-cent difference.
Right. But crucially, now the first digit for both options was the same. What?
So $1 and $1.25.
And guess what happened?
Yeah.
Suddenly, a massive 56% of people chose the larger option.
Wow, from 29% to 56% just by making the first digit the same.
Exactly. Because the first digit anchor was now identical, the difference between the two prices seemed psychologically smaller, less significant. It led to a 51% increase in sales for the pricier large coffee.
That's incredible. It really shows how these tiny visual cues, these anchors, can profoundly mess with our perception of value and nudge our buying decisions.
And it goes beyond just price perception. Anchors are expertly used to guide our actual spending behavior too, how much we buy.
Like in supermarkets.
Exactly. You've definitely seen those signs, right? Offer limited to 12 per family. Or limit 4 per customer.
Yeah, all the time. I always assumed it was to stop hoarders or something.
Well, that might be the stated reason. But psychologically, they're doing something else entirely. They are anchoring you to a higher quantity.
How so? A limit seems like it would make you buy less.
Think about it. That number 12 or 4 or whatever becomes the sort of socially suggested, maybe even desirable amount to purchase. Without that sign, maybe you just grab 1 or 2 cans of soup.
Yeah, probably.
But when the sign says limit 12, suddenly 12 seems like a normal, even expected quantity to buy. It becomes the implied suggestion.
Ah, okay. So the limit itself becomes the anchor.
Precisely. Researchers tested this with Campbell soup cans. They put up a sign limiting purchases to 12 cans per shopper. The result, the average number of cans bought more than doubled. It went from about 3.3 cans per shopper to 7 cans.
Wow. So the restriction actually made people buy more.
Significantly more, because the anchor was set much higher, subtly telling them, hey, buying 7, 8, maybe even 12 cans is perfectly normal for this great deal. It's a soft constraint encouraging greater consumption.
That's wild. And wasn't there a similar thing with KFC?
Oh, yeah, KFC Australia back in 2014. A brilliant case study. They wanted to boost sales of their $1 chips.
Always popular, I bet.
Very. But
Yeah.
the challenge was huge. They couldn't change the product, couldn't change the offer, couldn't change the price, only the communication.
So what do? Just advertise it more?
Not exactly. They took the purchase limit, which usually might be in small print, and they made it the main headline.
The main headline. What did it say?
It said, a deal so good you can only buy 4.
You can only buy 4. Okay, that flips the script.
Totally. They put that anchor, the number 4, front and center. On TV, billboards, everywhere. Instantly dropped it into everyone's mind. A phenomenal 56% increase in sales for those $1 chips.
56%, just by highlighting the limit.
Yep. It created the sense of scarcity, made the chips seem highly desirable. It turned a simple purchase into something coveted. All because they anchored people to that limit of 4, making it the star of the show.
Okay, so companies are definitely using anchors cleverly, sometimes maybe too cleverly, in everyday shopping. But what about those bigger financial moments, the really high-stakes stuff? Does anchoring play a role there too?
Oh, absolutely. That's where the anchoring effect really shows its power, especially in negotiations.
Negotiations, like salary
Yeah.
or buying a house.
Exactly. Think about it. The very first offer made, whether it's the seller's high asking price or the buyer's low initial bid, acts as an incredibly powerful anchor. It sets the entire range, the whole tone, the direction for all the counteroffers that follow.
It frames the whole discussion right from the start.
Precisely. It establishes a perceived zone of what's reasonable. Everything else gets judged relative to that first number.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
This really hits home for me. I remember my first real job offer after college.
The big moment.
Yeah, it was a marketing role. And honestly, I was just so thrilled to get an offer. The email came through.
Yep.
And there it was, the salary, bolded, right in the middle of the email.
The magic number.
It wasn't like a fortune, but it was way more than my part-time job paid. Enough for rent, loans, some left over.
Sounded good at the time.
It did. My brain just completely latched onto that number. It was the only reference point I had for this new stage of life.
Yeah.
I felt okay about it. Good, even. I was ready to just say yes. But then I mentioned the offer to a friend. He'd graduated the year before me, already working.
Okay.
And he just frowned. He said, that's okay. But you should have pushed for at least 15% more. Oof is right. My stomach just dropped. Instantly, I felt like I'd made a huge mistake. My mind was so completely anchored to that initial offer number, I was totally unprepared for his suggestion. His number felt astronomical, unrealistic.
Even though it might have been perfectly reasonable market value.
Yeah, exactly. But the anxiety wasn't even just about the money anymore. It was this feeling that I'd been blind, like I'd been somehow tricked or naive just by accepting that first number.
That initial anchor colored your entire perception of your own worth in that context.
It totally did.
Yeah.
It felt almost unfair how much power that single first number had over my thinking.
That's an incredibly common and relatable experience. It perfectly shows the emotional stickiness of an anchor, how quickly our minds just accept a given number as the norm or the starting point for value.
Yeah.
But it also brings up a critical point. When you're in that moment, when you feel kind of emotionally locked in by that first number,
Yeah.
how much real room for adjustment do you actually have, even if someone gives you better info later?
Right. It felt really hard to shift my thinking.
And that's where strategic anchoring comes in during negotiations. Savvy negotiators understand this. Instead of being too reasonable and starting somewhere in the middle, they'll often test the outer limits with their first offer.
So starting really high if you're selling or really low if you're buying.
Exactly. It's not necessarily about being aggressive just for the sake of it. It's about establishing a strong initial anchor, one that pulls the final agreement closer to your desired outcome. You avoid leaving value on the table just because you started too close to the middle ground. And what's really interesting here is that effective anchoring can actually create a perception of fairness, even when the outcome favors the anchor setter.
How does that work?
Well, if you set a compelling initial anchor, the other party starts working off that number. They adjust their expectations around your figure. So even if the final agreement is closer to your initial anchor, it can still feel like a reasonable compromise to them, because their whole mental framework for the negotiation was shaped by where you started.
Wow. So setting the anchor shapes their reality of the negotiation.
In a sense, yes. Which raises that important question again. How do we make sure we're not just reacting to someone else's anchor? How do we actively shape the discussion ourselves?
That makes me think of that story about Ed Rendell when he became mayor of Philadelphia. Wasn't there something about anchoring there?
Oh, absolutely. A fantastic real-world example of strategic public anchoring. This was back in 1992. Philadelphia was facing a massive $250 million deficit. Huge problem.
Right.
And complicating things, the city workers were among the highest paid municipal employees in the U.S. at the time. Rendell knew he needed significant concessions from the unions, but getting them to agree to major rollbacks, that was going to be incredibly tough.
Yeah, unions aren't typically eager to give things up.
Exactly. So what did Rendell do? Before formal negotiations even began, he went on a very public campaign. He started publicly, repeatedly, almost daily, pledging one thing. He would balance the city's budget no matter what.
Okay, setting a firm goal publicly.
And crucially, he added that he was prepared to endure a strike if necessary to achieve that goal.
So he anchored the public and the unions to his unwavering commitment and his willingness to face the consequences.
Precisely. This very public, very repeated anchor balancing the budget, willing to take a strike, effectively committed him to this challenging, non-negotiable goal in everyone's mind. It framed the entire upcoming negotiation. So when he finally got to the negotiating table, he offered the city workers a contract that included a wage freeze for 33 months.
A wage freeze for almost 3 years. That's huge. I assume there was a strike.
There was. But guess what? The strike lasted only 16 hours.
16 hours. That's it.
That's it. The workers, facing a mayor whose relentless public anchoring had painted him as absolutely unwavering, accepted the offer. That contract ended up saving the city an estimated $374 million over 4 years.
Wow. He used that public anchor to completely shift the negotiation landscape. He reset expectations.
He absolutely did. He leveraged that anchor to change the city's financial narrative and, crucially, the expectations of its employees about what was possible or acceptable. And that case just perfectly demonstrates the principle. The party that makes the first offer, that sets the first anchor. Whether it's a seller starting high or a buyer starting low, they significantly influence the final outcome.
That initial number just has this gravitational pull.
It really does. It pulls all the subsequent figures towards it. So while your friend's advice to ask for 15% more was probably spot on, host, your brain was already anchored to that first offer, making it feel incredibly difficult, emotionally taxing to make that big adjustment.
Totally. It felt almost insurmountable at the time.
And this principle isn't just for individual job offers or city budgets. It's a cornerstone of how expectations get set everywhere, in markets, in policy debates, you name it.
It really makes you think, why? Why are our brains so easily hooked by these anchors? It seems almost illogical sometimes.
Well, to understand the why, we kind of have to take a step back, way back. Not just to early economics, but to, like, the dawn of human cognition.
Okay, like evolutionary psychology.
Exactly. Imagine our early ancestors. They're navigating a world that's full of immediate dangers, profound uncertainties.
Predators, rival tribes, finding food.
Right. And they didn't have time for long, detailed analysis when, say, a rustle in the bushes might be a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah, hesitation could be fatal.
Or a flash of light in the distance might be a spreading wildfire. Decisions often had to be made incredibly quickly, efficiently, just for survival. So our brains evolved to make rapid, often good enough judgments. They relied on mental shortcuts.
Heuristics, that's the term, right?
That's the term psychologists use, heuristics. And the anchoring effect is one of the most powerful, most fundamental of these shortcuts. Think about it. Faced with an unknown quantity, like trying to quickly estimate the size of that rival tribe from just a glimpse, or the likely amount of food in an unfamiliar area, what do?
You probably grab onto whatever little information you do have as a starting point.
Exactly. Our ancestors would instinctively use the first available piece of information as a reference point, as an anchor. And then they'd adjust from there, usually insufficiently, as we discussed.
So it was actually an adaptive advantage back then, a way to make fast decisions in an uncertain world.
Hugely adaptive, it provided a fast, pretty effective way to get close enough to the right answer without burning too much precious mental energy.
So we're essentially running Stone Age software, this anchoring heuristic, when we're trying to make complex, modern financial decisions.
That's a great way to put it. We're using an ancient algorithm designed for quick survival judgments to deal with things like stock market fluctuations or mortgage rates. Our brains are often trying to find a solution that's just good enough because historically that often was the best path to survival. Perfect optimization wasn't always necessary or even possible.
And this connects back to Kahneman and Tversky's work again, right?
Yeah.
They were the ones who really formalized this idea.
Precisely. Their groundbreaking work in the 1970s wasn't just about spotting these biases. It was about understanding them scientifically as systematic patterns of deviation from pure, cold, hard rationality. Their famous 1974 paper, Judgment Under Uncertainty, Heuristics and Biases, explicitly laid out how people rely on these mental shortcuts. Things like representativeness, judging based on stereotypes availability, judging based on what comes to mind easily, and of course, anchoring.
Anchoring being one of the big ones.
One of the most robust. And they show that while these heuristics are efficient, they give us a quick mental framework. They also systematically lead to predictable errors in judgment, especially when precision really matters. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, these biases, like anchoring, they sometimes lead to costly mistakes, especially in modern finance. But they're also, in a way, how our brains cope, how we manage an overwhelming flood of information every day.
Our cognitive capacity is limited, after all.
Exactly. These shortcuts are coding mechanisms, especially for situations where we don't have a clear previous reference point or we're doing a full, perfectly rational calculation would just be too slow, too complex, or maybe impossible with the info we have.
So they can cause perceptual distortion, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, and irrationality, as the researchers put it.
Yes, but they're also a fundamental part of how our brains work to navigate a complex, uncertain world. They helped our ancestors survive under pressure.
That's a really important point. It's not always about being irrational in a purely negative way.
Yeah.
Sometimes making a quick decision is more valuable than making a perfectly accurate one much later. Biases help with speed.
True. There's a trade-off.
But, and this is the crucial but for our discussion, when we shift focus specifically to finance, where accuracy and precision are often paramount, where a tiny percentage difference can mean thousands, maybe millions over the long run.
Right. That's when these same mental shortcuts, these helpful Stone Age algorithms, can become major liabilities.
A quick guess might be fine for the rustle in the bushes.
But potentially disastrous for your retirement savings or your investment portfolio.
So this ancient programming is quietly running in the background, influencing our modern money choices.
That's the challenge.
Okay, let's get really concrete now. Let's look at exactly how this invisible force, this anchoring effect, directly impacts your specific financial decisions. Wallet, portfolio, the whole deal. So let's talk spending first. Everyday spending. How does anchoring trip us up there?
Well, the classic example is sales and discounts.
Ah, the sale price.
Exactly. We've all been there. You see something, maybe a new TV priced at £1,000. You think, maybe a bit much. You wait.
Okay.
A few weeks later, you see it advertised. Sale, now only £800.
And your first thought is?
Wow, great deal. I'm saving £200.
Right. You feel good about it, like you're being smart.
But that original £1,000 price, that's the anchor. The £800 only seems like a bargain because it's being compared to that initial higher anchor.
But you're still spending £800, which is still a lot of money.
Precisely. In many cases, these discounted products, anchored by their higher original price, can actually lead you to spend more money than you might have otherwise, not save. You get the feeling of saving, but you're still parting with a significant sum, maybe more than you really wanted to spend on a TV in the first place.
So the insight isn't just knowing about the anchor. It's actively seeing it and asking.
Okay. Ignore that original price for a second. What is this item actually worth to me? Would I pay £800 for it if I'd never seen the £1,000 tag? That's the harder but more rational. question.
Okay, that makes sense for spending. What about investing? The stakes seem even higher there.
Oh, the impact on investing is huge and potentially much more damaging long term. Think about the first piece of information you get about a potential investment.
Like the price I bought it at.
Yeah.
Or maybe its all-time high price.
Exactly. Or maybe an analyst's initial buy recommendation. That first piece of data becomes a powerful anchor in your mind, a fixed reference point.
And that leads to bad decisions. How?
Well, one classic example is holding on to losing investments for too long.
Because you're anchored to the price you paid for it.
Precisely. If a stock you bought at $50 drops to $30, many investors find it incredibly hard to sell. Why? Because they're anchored to that $50 purchase price. They keep hoping it will get back to their anchor, back to what they paid, even if all the rational signs suggest it's time to cut their losses and move on.
It's that combination of anchoring and loss aversion hating losses more than enjoying gains.
Exactly. But the critical insight here is that your initial purchase price is almost always an irrelevant anchor for your current sell decision.
So the rational question should be,
The rational question is, ignoring what I paid for it, if I had the cash equivalent of this stock today, would I buy this stock at its current price of $30 given everything I know now?
ooh, that's a tough question to ask, honestly.
It is. But if the answer is no, then holding on to it just because you're anchored to your purchase price is likely costing you capital and better opportunities elsewhere. And it's not just us regular folks either. Even the pros fall for it.
Like who? Financial advisors.
Even professional macroeconomic forecasters.
Mm-hmm.
These are highly trained PhD economists, right? Their whole job is predicting economic futures. Yet studies show they often anchor their predictions heavily on the salience of the latest data.
Meaning they focus too much on the most recent numbers.
Exactly. If the last quarter's inflation number was surprisingly high, their forecast for next year's inflation might jump up disproportionately. They get anchored to that recent data point, and it unduly influences their longer-term outlook, often leading to systematic errors in their forecasts.
So even having tons of data and expertise doesn't make you immune. That anchoring pull is strong.
Incredibly strong. The human brain just seems wired that way.
You mentioned analysts earlier, too. How does anchoring affect professional stock analysts? You said something about industry averages.
Yes, absolutely. This is a really interesting and quite systemic issue in the financial industry. Take sell-side analysts, the ones who publish buy, sell, or hold ratings and earnings forecasts for companies. Research shows they often anchor their earnings forecasts for a specific company on the industry median forecast earnings per share, FEPS.
Okay, wait, so they're forecasting company A's earnings, but they're influenced by the average forecast for companies B, C, and D in the same industry.
That's essentially it. Their forecast for company A gets kind of pulled towards the average forecast for the whole industry. This effect is called cross-sectional anchoring in forecasted EPS, or CF for short.
ETF, okay.
What CF highlights is this. Imagine company A is actually doing way better than its peers, historically strong earnings, much higher potential than the industry average. Because the analyst is anchored to that lower industry median, they might subconsciously sort of temper their optimism for company A. They might underforecast its potential because it looks so different from the anchor point, the industry average.
And the reverse could happen too. A weaker company might get a forecast that's too optimistic because it's pulled up towards the median.
Precisely. It's not necessarily malicious. It's often an unconscious cognitive shortcut. A quick way for the analyst to calibrate their estimate against a benchmark, the industry median anchor.
Okay, that's fascinating. So this creates a predictable bias in their forecasts. Does that have real market consequences?
It absolutely does. And here's the really interesting part. Studies have found that firms with a high CF,
Meaning their forecast is way above the industry median anchor, suggesting analysts might actually be under-forecasting them relative to their true potential.
exactly. Those high CF firms tend to significantly outperform low CF firms in terms of subsequent stock returns.
So the market eventually recognizes the analysts were too anchored to the median and underappreciated these high flyers.
That seems to be the case. But the takeaway isn't just that analysts are biased. It gets even more interesting. There's evidence that sophisticated corporate managers know about this anchoring bias and actively try to exploit it.
Companies exploit analyst anchoring. How?
Well, think about a stock split. Often it's presented as making shares more accessible.
Right, lower price per share.
But announcing a stock split also lowers the forecast earnings per share, FEPS, number itself. Some research suggests managers might use stock splits strategically to reset the anchor for analysts at a lower FEPS level.
Why would they want a lower anchor?
Because if analysts are anchored lower, subsequent positive news or actual earnings might look even better relative to that lowered anchor, potentially leading to more positive forecast revisions or bigger upward surprises.
Wow, that's quite a game being played.
It really is. And for us as investors, it should be a bit of a red flag. It suggests we need to do our own homework, dig deeper, and not just blindly trust the consensus analyst forecasts, because they might be anchored.
And it's not just a U.S. or Wall Street phenomenon, right? Does this affect investors everywhere?
Absolutely. This isn't just some abstract theory. There's empirical data from different markets. For instance, a study specifically looked at millennial investors in Pokhara, Nepal. It found that anchoring bias significantly influenced their investment decisions too, often leading them to hold positions too long or make choices based on that initial information rather than updated facts.
So it's a pretty universal human tendency affecting financial decisions across cultures and age groups.
It seems to be. If you're human and making decisions with numbers, you're susceptible to anchoring bias unless you actively fight against it.
Okay, one more area before we talk solutions. Budgeting. How does anchoring sneak in there? Seems more straightforward.
You'd think so, but it happens there too. Think about budgeting apps or even simple spreadsheet templates.
Yeah, they often come with pre-filled categories.
Exactly. They often have default spending limits suggested for categories like gas, groceries, entertainment, rent.
Right, as a starting point.
And they're meant to be helpful starting points. But what often happens, they act as powerful anchors. Instead of someone taking the time to really analyze their actual spending over the last few months and setting limits based on their unique reality.
They just tweak the default numbers a bit.
Pretty much. People tend to just adjust those default amounts slightly up or down,
Right.
rather than starting from scratch based on their own data.
So the budget ends up not really reflecting their actual life or needs.
It can lead to budgets that aren't truly accurate. You might end up consistently overspending in certain categories because the default anchor was too low. Or you might feel unnecessarily squeezed in others because the default anchor was set arbitrarily high by the app developer, not based on your priorities.
All because of a preset kind of random number that someone else thought was a good average. Another anchor's subtly messing things up.
Exactly. It's another prime example of how a seemingly helpful feature can inadvertently derail your personalized financial planning.
Okay, so let's recap where we are. This anchoring effect, it's everywhere. It means a single number, the first salary you see, the original price tag, the price you paid for a stock, an industry average, a default budget figure is constantly, silently shaping your financial reality.
It's a powerful, often invisible force.
And often working against your best interests. It's not easy to spot and probably even harder to overcome.
Which raises that crucial question. Awareness is great, yes, but it's just the first step. How do we actually move from just knowing about anchoring to truly overcoming it in our decisions?
Right, what can you actually do?
Okay, so the first and maybe the most fundamental step is exactly what we've been doing here. Cultivate awareness. Just recognizing that this bias exists, understanding how it works, how it influences your perceptions, that's huge. Being conscious of its potential impact gives you that vital pause, that moment to reconsider your initial gut reaction before you act.
So it's about catching yourself, seeing the anchor in real time.
Yes, making the invisible visible. When you see that sale price, your internal voice should immediately go, aha, original price, that's the anchor trying to pull me. Okay, deep breath. Now, what's this really worth to me? Ignoring that anchor.
Actively identifying it and then immediately challenging its relevance.
That's step one. Awareness and immediate questioning.
Okay, so awareness first. What's next? If I know the anchor is there, how do I lessen its grip?
The next step is to actively broaden your perspective. Don't just settle for that first piece of information, that first anchor, or the first opinion you hear. You need to consciously seek out diverse viewpoints. Look for contrary arguments, especially for big decisions like investing or negotiating.
So if I'm tempted by a stock, I should look for reasons not to buy it.
Absolutely. Read the reports from the analysts who are bearish, not just the bullish ones. Understand their reasoning. Interestingly, some studies suggest that if you encounter contrary ideas first, before your initial bias gets too cemented, you might be more open to considering them.
So actively fight confirmation bias by seeking out dissent.
Exactly. Engage in open-minded discussions,
Yeah.
listen to different perspectives, make a real effort to challenge your own initial assumptions and the anchor they might be based on. The wider your net of information, the less likely one single anchor will trap you.
Okay. Awareness, broader perspective. What else?
Following directly from that is step 3. Actively question the anchor itself. Whenever you identify an initial piece of information, that price, that salary, that historical number, that default setting, don't just accept it. Really interrogate it.
What do you mean?
Ask yourself critical questions. Is this anchor actually relevant to my current decision? Or is it just some arbitrary number someone threw out there? Who benefits if I accept this number as my starting point? What emotions does this anchor trigger in me? Does it make me feel smart, scared of missing out, pressured?
Digging into the anchor's validity and emotional pull.
Yes. And seek additional information to compare it against. Compare and contrast different reference points. Always examine the context in which the anchor was presented. Like with that job offer, instead of just anchoring to the offer number, immediately research industry salary averages for that specific role in your specific location with your level of experience.
Get external, objective reference points to challenge the initial anchor.
Exactly. Don't let that first number stand unchallenged.
Right, which leads nicely into the next strategy, I imagine, doing your homework.
Precisely. Strategy number 4 is conduct independent, thorough research. This means being proactive. Don't just passively receive information. Actively go out and gather data from multiple trusted sources.
Don't just rely on the seller's original price tag or the first analyst report you read.
Correct. If it's a product, look up historical pricing data on independent sites. If it's an investment, read the company's actual financial statements. Look at competitor performance, read analyses from different perspectives. Focus on verifiable facts and figures that can either support or, crucially, challenge that initial anchor.
Fact-checking is key here.
Paramount. Check sources for accuracy, credibility, potential bias, and importantly, recency. Is that stock price from a year ago really relevant now? Probably not as relevant as the last month's data and future projections. This multifaceted research approach builds a much more solid, objective foundation for your decision, minimizing the sway of any single, potentially flawed anchor.
Okay, research is crucial, but sometimes decisions feel rushed. What about time?
That's strategy number 5. Take sufficient time for reflection. Anchoring often thrives on snap judgments and hasty decisions.
So, resist the pressure to decide immediately.
Yes, especially for significant financial matters. Give yourself the space to consciously process the information you've gathered. Premature decisions often haven't allowed your brain the time needed to properly evaluate and potentially dislodge that initial anchor.
Step back, maybe sleep on it.
Absolutely. Dedicate enough time to really assess the anchors you've identified, evaluate all the information thoughtfully, and consider the broader implications. Patience, coupled with that diligent research and evaluation, allows for more rational, less emotionally driven judgments. It lets reason catch up with that initial anchored impulse.
That makes sense. Slowing down helps. What else? You mentioned goals earlier.
Yes. Strategy number 6 is vital. Focus on your personalized goals and long-term plans. Remember, this is your financial journey, not a race against someone else or a need to match some external benchmark you saw online.
So, define what I actually want to achieve financially.
Clearly define your personal goals. Saving for a house, retirement, funding a passion project, whatever it is. Then establish a financial plan based on your unique circumstances, your timeline, your risk tolerance, your aspirations.
Not based on what your neighbor bought or what some influencer is hyping.
Exactly. When your decisions are aligned with your internal goals, you create your own relevant anchor. This makes you less susceptible to impulsive actions driven by external anchors disguised as amazing opportunities or unbeatable deals.
If that deal doesn't actually move you closer to your goals, it's not really a deal for you.
That's the essence of it. Let your own plan be your primary guide.
Okay, that's 6 powerful strategies. Is there a final piece of advice?
Yes, the 7th strategy.
All right.
Don't hesitate to seek objective professional advice when you need it. Sometimes, even with all the awareness and research, our own biases are just really deeply ingrained and hard to spot or overcome completely on our own.
So, talking to a financial advisor.
A qualified financial advisor, especially one who acts as a fiduciary, meaning they're legally obligated to act in your best interest, can provide an invaluable external perspective. They're trained to identify cognitive biases, including anchoring in their clients' thinking.
And automated tools. like robo-advisors.
They can also help. Automated portfolio management tools often rely on algorithms designed to be objective and disciplined, removing some of the emotional, bias-driven decision-making. Whether human or automated, an objective third party can help you create and stick to a long-term plan based on data and principles, providing a framework that inherently reduces the influence of anchors and other potentially harmful biases.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. We've really taken a deep dive into the anchoring effect. We've seen how this single, often unnoticed number can subtly steer our spending, our investments, even our budgeting, sometimes way off course.
It's a powerful psychological current.
But the key takeaway, the really empowering part, is that you're not helpless against it. While it might be challenging to eliminate entirely we are human, after all, you are now equipped, you have real practical strategies.
Awareness, broadening your perspective, actively questioning the anchor,
Doing that independent research, taking time for reflection, focusing on your own goals.
and seeking objective advice when needed.
These aren't just abstract ideas. They are real, accessible tools you can start using today to make more informed, more rational, and ultimately better financial decisions. Decisions that truly align with your values and your goals.
You absolutely can reclaim control from these hidden influences.
So, as you go forth from this deep dive, here's something to chew on, a final thought. How many of the things you consider fixed truths in your financial life, those numbers you absolutely swear by, maybe it's the peak price of stock you own once hit, or the salary level you believe you absolutely deserve, or the maximum price you think you could ever afford for a certain type of house? Could any of those unshakable beliefs about your money actually be hidden anchors? Just the first figures you happen to encounter, now silently guiding you, maybe even guiding you off course from where you truly want to go? It's definitely something to think about. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences on this. We invite you to join our growing community. You can find us over on the Psychology of Money podcast website and on our social channels. Share your own stories. Tell us how you've noticed or maybe even battled anchoring bias in your life. Or perhaps you've discovered other financial anchors we didn't even touch on today.
Yeah, we really do want to hear from you. Your insights help everyone in the community learn and grow. It's a shared journey.
Absolutely. Your participation is incredibly valuable to us and to fellow listeners. Thank you so much for being here today, for diving deep with us into the fascinating world of anchoring. Until next time, be kind to your mind and be thoughtful with your money.